Hey, thanks for checking out Nuts and Bolts with Tone, and welcome to my channel. Today I have a 7.3 Powerstroke. I think it's an 01, and we're going to be replacing the intake boots. Let me show you what I'm talking about.
So on this 7.3, you have in the front here what's called a compressor manifold. This is where the compressed air from the turbo goes out and goes through the intercooler, comes back and goes into the engine. And it's connected underneath by two rubber boots. That's what we're going to be replacing. It's underneath, so we got to get that off.
So the way this works is that the turbo spins and it compresses the air, it pushes it out, it comes through the intercooler like this, and then it comes back in here and it goes into the engine. And so this part splits and goes down, and it's split, and it has a boot and a boot. And those go to the intake manifold. One is underneath this glow plug module, and the other one is under here. You can't see it. So we're going to be pulling this off because I'm going to be replacing those two boots. Show you how to do this. You can disconnect it and just move it over. It's not that hard to take out. Now with this one, what I do is map sensors. So map sensor hoses get hard and brittle, and it's connected down here to the lower part of this compressor manifold. And then it's over here on the map sensor. So what I do is I never ever disconnect these rubber hoses unless I have to. So I disconnect the connector, unbolt the bolts here, and I move the map sensor over with the compressor manifold. This side, you can unbolt it here, unbolt it down there, and just kind of roll it out of the way, and you can zip tie it. Over here we have a ton of more room. It's easier just to leave this one in. You don't have to take it all the way out. It's not hard to come out, it just goes under the power steering pump. Now my tip for charge air pipes is you never disconnect the clamps on the pipe itself. I only disconnect the clamps on the intake side, the turbo side, and the intercooler side. The problem is this boot has to slip into a perfect groove on this pipe. If you don't get it right and you go drive it, it'll blow off. So don't touch this clamp, don't touch this clamp. Only the turbo side and the intercooler side. For charge air pipes, I have this set of 4 sockets, and these are 4 charge air pipes. They're designed for them. I know a lot of people are like, oh, just use a socket. Well, the problem is not all sockets are long enough to go on the charge air pipes. You end up fighting it. I work on a lot of diesels and a lot of turbo vehicles, so these are beneficial. This is the one I use almost all the time. Anyways, this is a snap-on set. I'm not sure what the part number is, but anyways, they're 4 charge air pipes.
So for taking these off, I either use my snap-on cordless or my Milwaukee. The snap-on cordless is zapping off these charge air pipes. But for the intercooler side, I use my Milwaukee because I have a lot more room. And it's just faster. So for disconnecting the charge air pipes, I use a radiator hook pick just to slide in there and break the connection. Then you're going to unbolt your map sensor, disconnect the electrical, and move it over. After you've broke the connections loose, just pull both of them over, out of the way. And then we got to work on the compressor manifold. We're going to start with the wastegate solenoid. So we're going to disconnect the electrical connector and then the vacuum line assembly. Now the vacuum line assembly, it has a dual into the wastegate solenoid. There's one that goes into the intake air tube, one that goes back to the wastegate solenoid, and then a main vacuum connection down at the bottom of the compressor manifold. Now my vacuum lines are torn, so you want to inspect those really good. Next, we need to disconnect the intake air heater. Now the intake air heater has a power wire on the outside, and it has a captured nut on the electrical connection. So you're going to move that out of the way. Now there's another part of the intake air heater that we'll take off in a minute. Next, we're going to disconnect the intake air boots. Now there's 4 clamps, 2 on each one. You want to look at how the clamps are oriented before you take them off, because that's how they need to go back on. Next up is the clamp connecting the compressor manifold to the turbo. You got to disconnect that, and then you got to break the clamp free. There's 3 sections and it gets stuck. So once you disconnect that, you're going to go ahead and take your compressor manifold off. Oh wait, the rest of the intake air heater. There's an insulator and then there's a ground. The ground goes first, then the insulator, then the power wire. And make sure you replace that O-ring that goes between the compressor manifold and the turbo. And then here's the clamp. So these are the sections I was talking about. So they get stuck. And what you can do is take a screwdriver and you put it in the corner of that little section and then just tap it, and then that section will pop. And then you have to do the next section. Usually the underneath is the hardest one to undo.
For access. Okay, so here's why we're doing this. So these things are full of oil. You can see in there, full of oil, and it's leaking out down into the engine valley. So I'll show you what the engine valley looks like in just a second. I don't have new boots yet. Ford messed up and sent me the wrong ones. So you can see right there. Okay, so let me get a view down here. So you can see that oil down there. This truck is really clean, so customers really takes care of this, so that's why we're taking care of this. And to go ahead and clean up that engine valley, wipe down these intake manifolds, and I'm also replacing that breather. We're here in California where we do smogs, and unfortunately this is the PCV, and they failed that thing for being oil soaked. It wasn't disconnected or anything like that, but this breather is covered in oil, so it's going to be full of oil, so we're going to replace that. Super commonly unserviced component is that component right there helps your engine breathe. So that's how the pressure from your crankcase comes out, and it goes through this hose right there, and it comes up into the intake air tube, and then it goes into your turbo. And that's how we do that. Well, if this thing gets plugged up, your engine has excessive pressure, and then you start having engine failures. You have leaks on 6.7 Powerstrokes. It causes lots of leaks, things like that. So service your breather. So now I gotta wait for parts. The problem is when that breather gets so full, what it does is it just spits oil right into your turbo, right through here. So this thing will be completely engulfed in oil. The last one I did, I actually had to replace this part. It was so bad. So that's, I'm gonna go ahead and clean this all up so that way we know if there's a turbo issue. It'd be kind of hard to even decide if you have a turbo issue when you have a bad breather, because it's just spitting oil into your turbo, and then it could appear that you have a bad turbo, but you just have a bad breather. So updated part number right here. If you look up the part number, it's going to be wrong. That is the updated part number for this vacuum assembly right here for the wastegate. So we got a new one here. Had to call Ford. So just over here, getting my new breather all ready to go. It's really stupid. Ford is, sometimes dealerships, they make me mad. So these two seals come in one bag. One part number, one bag, two seals. You need these two seals for the bottom of here. Now, here are the seals for on top. This goes on the bolt. These are in separate bags. Why they're in separate bags, I have no idea. You need two of those and two of these to do that. So stupid. So just got my boots in. Here's the part number for the boots. They look like this. They look the same. And it tells you where to put the clamp. Pretty cool, because you know how far you can go to put the clamp on to make sure that it's on right. The other thing is you want to make sure it's on straight. So since I'm putting this back together and these boots are off, it's going to go on a little bit different than the way I would normally do it. I'm just going to put the boots on and then slide the clamps on, and then I'm going to position everything in place, get the upper clamp started, so that way, because that's the most important thing, is that it seals up tight up against here, because this is a direct, because the turbo is a, and this compressor manifold is a direct connection, and any leakage there would be a boost leak and you'll lose power. And so we need to make sure. I got a new O-ring on there, and I got some Silglide on there to make it nice and a good fit to where it doesn't tear as we rotate. So I'm going to set the camera up over here, but it's going to be kind of hard to see. The only other thing that you want to do is when you're putting these boots on, you want to make sure you position your clamps in a way to where, like this one, I'm going to position them down this way they had them positioned, whoa, they had them positioned way back like this, so I had to come behind here. So we don't want to do that. So we want to make sure that they're easy to get to. So, for example, this one on this side, since we have a ton of room, I'm going to position these probably something like that right there. So the only thing I normally do is I normally lubricate just the edge of both of these, whichever one I take off, so that way I have room to maneuver it around and it slides easily, because I don't want it to tear. Just gonna slide the clamps on right now. Not gonna do anything with them yet. Just want them in place. I'll maneuver them later. All right, now is gonna be the fun part. Just getting the compressor manifold in there. And I went ahead and fixed this. You couldn't see it from where I was at, but they had this clamp right here all the way up inside this boot. So I went ahead and moved this clamp down. Another tool that helps is something like this right here to help slide the hose up and around.
So we need to get the compressor manifold in both of the intake boots. So you want to slide it into one boot, and then while you're trying to get it in the other, you have to wiggle the boot around. Once you have it in both boots, you're going to position it up against the turbo. You want it to fit snug up against the turbo, and then you're going to slip the clamp on. You're going to snug the clamp on, snug the clamp, but don't tighten it.
Keep this manifold in place, because these two halves have to stay together. I should just go over there and grab my gun, but I'm already here. I have this, so I'm just gonna snug this up just to keep the two halves together so it stays tight. Normally, when you're just taking this compressor manifold off, if you haven't taken the boots off and you only disconnected one end of the boot, it doesn't really matter, because once this mates up, your manifold is going to be inside of both of the hoses, exactly where it was when you started. So that's really all that matters there.
So now we need to tighten up the intake boot clamps. Now, if you're replacing the intake boots, then this is going to take you a little bit longer. If you just remove the manifold and you're not replacing the boots, then you only disconnected one side of the boot. You want to make sure that your clamp is on there even.
All right, I'll show you with this O-ring here. Okay, so you see this. You see where the old clamp rode, and if you roll it around, looks like it's pretty close to the same. You know, here it dropped down a little bit. But what you want to be careful of is that your clamp doesn't do this, so that you don't have your clamp down like this and then way up here. You want to make sure that your clamp stays pretty close around the same, because what will happen is your clamp will be cockeyed and then you can have a leak. Anytime you have worm drive clamps, that can happen. Radiator hoses will do the same thing. So you want to try to make sure, because you see we have the lines on the hose here showing you where to put the clamp. But if you roll it to the other side, you can't see it. You can only see the one side. So you want to make sure that you put it on the same all the way around. The clamp over there, when I was doing the lower clamp, this part, I had it here, and then when I rolled it over to here, the clamp was moving up this way. And so you want to make sure you keep it close.
So now you're going to go ahead and come to the passenger side and get that hose in place and get the clamps on.
Like I can put it in place here, but then when I look at the other side, it's way off. I'm gonna probably have to get a screwdriver to put the other side in place. All right, let's see. A lot of times this clamp you'll find that somebody has bent up the, hang on, let me get this tight. This is fighting me here. Sometimes I like to use hand tools for this kind of stuff because I can get a feel for it. Can't get a feel for it with a power tool. Okay, so let me try not to fall off my box here. So this clamp right here, a lot of times you'll find that people will bend this part up and over it to make sure it doesn't come off, or for whatever reason, I don't know why they would do it, but you'll find that sometimes that's the case. So now we're all tightened up, and now it's time to connect everything. Put your ground cable on. Don't forget your insulator. Be careful with this. You don't want to snap this off. This is your intake air heater. Okay. Map sensor needs to rotate back. Now let's try to see if I was right about this red clip here. Let's see if it'll go on. See, look at that. It won't go on. So we're gonna try to let's see. There we go. Okay. All right. Well, now we got to see if we can connect it. Nope. Okay. Well, I know why it won't connect. Okay. So now this little. Let me see. So right here. All right. So here's the red tab that's got to come up. So not here, but here. Let me try to zoom in a little more. See if I can put this in the camera frame. Okay. So right in here, there's a red part you got to push in. Sorry about that. All right, let's see if I can do this now. There we go. All right, we're connected. Now we're locked in. Put these on. Put these on. Now I got to go get my new map sensor hose, or my new hose here. Be careful with these nuts here. Be careful with these nuts because this is a plastic housing with these studs in here. You'll snap those off easily. All right, there's that. Okay.
So now it's time for the vacuum assembly. You want to go ahead and fish it under. You got to fish under the green and red one underneath. You want to fish it around until you get your main connection on, and then go ahead and connect the rest of them.
Now you do not want to lube these hoses up because you don't want them to come off. Okay, so now we have this. All right, that goes over there. That's there. Okay. So now, so for these, a lot of times you will have to use a little pick. I used one of these in a video and I called it a pick. And someone gave me a hard time saying it's not a pick, it's a radiator hose tool. So, whatever you want to call it, it is, I actually call them radiator hook picks. I don't think I loosened that up enough to be able to move it. All right. Okay, there we go. All right, now these, when you put these on, you want to make sure that you have them nice and square because you don't want these to pop off. I think this battery is no good because it's already yellow and I literally only used it trying to take these off. Oh, look at this. I almost forgot to connect the wastegate solenoid connector. Funny story about this right here. The very first thing I ever did on a diesel was I had a check engine light and it was for the wastegate solenoid, and I tested this and replaced one. It was the very first repair and diag I ever did on a diesel, and that was like 16 or 17 years ago. Pretty crazy right there. That's it. So we have the boots on right there. You can see the clamps. They're pretty close to the same, a little bit off. Glow plug module was in my way, caused me a lot of trouble. Let's look at this. Whoa, I'm late on my ratchet. All right, I got these ones looking real good. So this one should be pretty good. Just got to put all that intake piping back on because I did the breather. One more little tip while we're here. So I replaced the degas bottle because it was leaking, and also this upper radiator hose. The original radiator hose, it goes through the belt. So if you have to take the belt off, you have to disconnect the radiator hose, meaning you have to mess with the coolant. Well, a dual alternator hose comes around here, right along this bracket, put a couple zip ties there, comes along here and it goes down to the thermostat. Now, if we have to service this belt comes off and we don't have to touch the cooling system. So did a little upgrade since I was draining the coolant anyways to replace this. So I hope you enjoyed the video of replacing these boots, taking the compressor manifold off. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell, you get notified of all my future content, which you definitely don't want to miss. Check out my playlist. You can click on the 7.3 playlist and it shows you all the videos I have for 7.3s, or if you just really like diesels, you can click on the diesel playlist. Thanks for watching the video. I'll see you next time.